All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to Cattle HQ Live, everybody. This is a webinar series brought to you by South Dakota State University Extension. My name is Erin DeHaan, and I'm one of the co-hosts for our Cattle HQ Live series. Today we have with us Robin Salverson, an Extension cow-calf field specialist, and Dr. Jessica Drum, an Extension beef reproductive physiology specialist discussing reproductive success in the cow herd. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them into our Q&A or chat features, and we will address those questions at the end of our presentation. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jess and Robin and let them talk to you today about reproductive success.
There is, welcome everyone to Cattle HQ Live. I'm the one going to be kicking off this first part of the presentation today. And with that being said, we have a poll that we would like you guys to complete. So if you could take some time and select the one that best fits you. And the question is, do you currently use estrous synchronization with, and that can be just with artificial insemination, just with natural service, or both? Or do you not use it at all? So it looks like, according to the poll, that some of you use it with artificial insemination or also with both AI and natural service, or you don't use it at all. So um, we're excited that some of you use estrous synchronization, while others, I think you'll gain a lot. All of you listening to this Cattle HQ Live webinar will learn quite a bit from our talk today about using estrous synchronization and the value it has in reproductive success. Can you advance it, Jessica? Thank you. So typically, during the breeding season, gestational length is about 283 days. And so to keep it on a 365-day calving interval, we should have that cow bred within 82 days after she calves. But realistically, that doesn't occur because we have things like uterine involution that occurs, which takes approximately 35 days. We also have things like dystocia, disease, and stress that can also lengthen that postpartum interval timeout, and also just reinitiating cyclicity in that female. So in reality, we only have about 50 to 60 days to get that female bred after she calves. So typically, estrus cycle is 21 days. And so during a normal estrus response over a 21-day period, um, cows or heifers, only about 5% of them come in on a daily basis. And so we can get, those females get really spread out during that time frame. And so one of the tools that we can use is estrus synchronization. And so kind of what is estrus synchronization? I actually had that question posed to me here not too long ago. And basically what that is we are controlling when those females come into heat by using hormones. And then that will allow us to have more females bred up earlier in the calving season. So whether we're using an estrus synchronization where we using AI and estrus and breeding off of estrus, or if we're using a time breeding. So it just allows us to sync those females up to a particular time so that we can breed them in a specific period of time. So estrus synchronization does give us a lot of advantages. The first one is an additional opportunity to get your females bred during the breeding season. So if we look at the next slide, during a typical 60-day breeding season, we have about 3 opportunities. So remember again, we have about 50 to 60 days to get those females bred after calving. So again, in a 60-day breeding season, we would have about 3 opportunities without synchronization. But if we include estrus synchronization, we can actually have an additional chance to get those females bred. So instead of 3 chances, we get 4 opportunities during that 60-day breeding season to get that female bred. So that's the first advantage to estrus synchronization. The second advantage is with some of the hormones that we use with estrus synchronization, we can actually jumpstart some of those non-cycling heifers and cows to help reduce those numbers of open or late calving females. The third advantage is more calves are born earlier in the calving season. So typically we have about a 13 to 14 day calf age advantage. And if we think about calves gain about 2 pounds per head per day, that equates to about 20 to 40 pound heavier calves at weaning as a result of estrous synchronization. And on the next slide, it shows that this advantage of having heavier calves actually doesn't last just for one calf or two calves, but for a majority of the lifetime of that cow. So you can see in this particular slide that even all the way out to her sixth calf, she's getting that advantage of having an earlier calf and having the advantage of having a heavier weaning weight because she's bred up early in the breeding season. The next advantage that we have when it comes to estrous synchronization is increased longevity of the cow herd. And so it's actually a problem in the beef industry. We often think about cow longevity being a decreased cow longevity, or excuse me, have cow longevity problems in the dairy industry. But in reality, we actually have that in the cow herd or in our beef industry. So on the next slide, this slide shows um, just some research that was actually done here in South Dakota by Dr. Eric Mosel that on average, our longevity of our beef cows is only about 5 to 6 years of age. So in reality, those females aren't even actually making money for us yet because typically it varies. It differs for every operation, but depending on your input costs, but it might take 6 to 7 calves for you uh, s- to actually having that female start making money for you. So one of the things we can do to help increase that longevity of the cow herd are getting those heifers bred up in the first 21-day estrus cycle, or in the first 21 days. So that will allow her to stay in the herd longer and hopefully make you money. So that was just a quick introduction of the benefits of estrous synchronization, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jessica Drum.
So to keep going with that, with our presentation, now I'm going to talk about a little bit what are the options that you have throughout to use synchronization. So we have here some of the options for those that are already familiar with the estrous synchronization. You probably have heard of those products. Here I have just examples of them. By any means, I want to emphasize any of the brands. There are many options available. We're going to talk about that later. But just some options that we have on the market. So the cedar over here, those are the options that we can use here on the right, on the left side. We can see the options that we can use on cows and heifers. So we have here the cedar that is a progesterone intravaginal implant that can be used in cows and heifers. It has about 1.38 milligrams per insert. In addition to that, we have the prostaglandin products. Here we have two different products. They work the same, they just have different active products, active molecule, but they basically do the same task. And here in the bottom on the left side, we can see the generator gonadorelin. That is also just an example of one of the products available, but it basically all of them do the same thing. In the heifers, we have another product that would work kind of like what the cedar does, and is an analog to progesterone, and it serves for the same purpose. We're going to go in details as we go. So for starters, progesterone that I mentioned before is naturally produced by the body of the cows by the corpus luteum. So the progesterone, like the name say, is the pro-pregnancy hormone. So it's produced during pregnancy by this structure over here that is present in the ovary. However, this structure is also present during the natural estrous cycle without a pregnancy. So in between ovulations, this corpus luteum, or CL, like we call it from now on, it develops in the ovary and remains in the ovary until the end of the estrous cycle, when it regresses and the estrus occur. So basically what this corpus luteum does and the progesterone, they suppress the heat behavior and as a consequence, the ovulation. So during pregnancy, a cow doesn't need to be ovulating anymore, right? So that's what the hormone does. And at the same time, during the middle of the estrous cycle, that's not necessary either. So this hormone have this use. So if we go to another structure that is present in the ovary, we have the follicle, that is this structure highlighted right here, is a blister-like structure that produces the egg and also produces the estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone that is produced during heat. So here in this red bar here on the left, we see the moment where the cow is in heat and the cycle goes on, and at the end of the cycle, we have the estrus again. This purple line here demonstrates the estrogen concentration that goes up as the follicles develop and as the behavior of estrus starts. So basically, that's what goes to the brain. This hormone goes to the brain and makes the cow act like it's in heat, like the picture is showing here. So this estrogen hormone has an important goal in triggering the ovulation. So this estrogen acts on it's produced by the follicles, the growing follicles. This green circle here is the growing follicle. Large dominant follicles produce a lot of estrogen, and this estrogen will cause ovulation and estrous behavior in ovulation. So basically, the estrogen, it's going to induce a GnRH surge by the brain that will cause an LH surge, this yellow line here, and causing the ovulation. So basically, this GnRH, gonadotropin release hormone, causes induction of ovulation, but also reset follicular waves, allowing for the cow to restart a new cycle. So these are some of the products that are available in the market. All of these products have the same efficiency. The only difference between them would be the dose. So I always recommend everybody that I talk to always check the label. Doesn't matter what kind of product that you have, what brand, always check the label to make sure that you're having the correct dose, because those hormones, they work correctly only when correctly applied in the right dose. So, and how does that work? So the GnRH, we give a shot of GnRH. This GnRH goes to the brain of the cow and triggers an LH surge. This LH goes to the ovaries, and in the big, large dominant follicle present in the ovary, causes it to ovulate within 30 hours after the injection. So to replace the large dominant follicle after ovulation, the CL takes place and it starts producing progesterone. So it's an evolution. So it evolves from the follicle to the ovulation to the CL and starts producing progesterone. So there are some limitations when it comes to use the GnRH. So only the GnRH just worked in large dominant follicles, which means that a lot of times during the estrous cycle, you don't have a large dominant follicles, and which means that this GnRH would not gonna work. So it's not gonna cause any harm, but it's just not gonna cause the effect that you expect. However, when it comes to dominant follicles, if you have a dominant follicle in that ovary, it will cause their effects and cause ovulation and reset a follicular wave. Another hormone that I described in the first slide is the prostaglandin F2 alpha. So the corpus luteum is present during the estrous cycle, but in case of a non-pregnancy, so by the end of the cycle, if the uterus detect that there's no embryo in there, the cow didn't get pregnant, this uterus detects the lack of embryo and it starts producing prostaglandin F2 alpha. So here we see the estrous cycle. So we have the episode of estrus on day 0, and let's say we inseminate here, but it didn't get pregnant. By the end of the cycle, about day 15, the uterus realizes there's no embryo there, and it starts to secrete prostaglandin. This prostaglandin is going to act on the CL and cause the regression. So then the estrus can occur again. Here are some other commercial products available. Again, once more, they work all the same when properly applied, but they also have a change in the concentration in the product, a change in the dose of the product. I always recommend look at the label again, make sure that you are using it according to the label indication. And how does that work? So like I said before, it targets the CL that produces the progesterone so during the middle of the cycle. And when we kill the corpus luteum, when we regress the corpus luteum, the cows are going to come in heat within 72 hours and they can ovulate. However, there are some limitations with the use of the PGF. First of all, it has to have a CL, right? So if there's no CL present, it doesn't matter how much PGF you're going to give, it's not going to cause the effects that we're expecting. So the CL, when the CL is really young, right after ovulation on the first 5 days, the PGF may not cause the effect that we are expecting because the CL is still growing and does not respond to that. Other than that, during the estrous cycle at the end, after luteolysis already occur, giving PGF is not going to cause effect. However, if you have a CL within this range of age, between 5 and about 18 days, it's going to cause the luteolysis and the effect that you were expecting. So here are some options of synchronization protocols that use those hormones that I mentioned before. So those hormones, there are a variety of protocols available. These 2 sheets that I'm showing here, they can be found at the Beef Repro Task Force website over here. And they get updated as the research advances and they develop we develop new protocols. They have options for heat detection with timed AI or even fixed time AI, or even for heat detection only in natural service only. So you have, I'm not here to tell you which one you should use. I'm here to give you the options that mostly fit on your operation, on your situation. A lot of times producers let us know that they chose a specific protocol because of how good they fit on their schedule, how good they fit on their labor offer. So that comes to the operation and your decision. However, all of those, they have a fairly good efficiency if correctly applied. So now I'm going to talk about some key points for the efficiency of the synchronization protocols. So I'm not going to go, I'm going to tell you those key points based on the ideal environment, thinking about management. Let's assume that everything else with the nutrition, with the disease control and other management issues are all well done, well corrected. So thinking specifically about the protocol. So first of all, if you use estrous synchronization in natural service, there are some things that you have to estrous synchronization with natural service. There are some things that you have to pay attention to. So for example, we have this simple protocol over here on the left where you just turn the bulls out and 4 days later it's given a PGF. So basically the bulls are our best heat detector that you can have. So whoever comes in heat within these 4 first days, they're gonna get bred. So because that bull is, if your bull is in a good condition, has a good BSC, he's gonna get that going. However, let's say a couple of cows came in heat before that. Remember when Robin showed in the beginning of this presentation, at any given day, you can have cows coming in heat. So let's say some of those cows came in heat right before you put the bulls in. So the bulls could not check that one out because they were already gone. So 4 days later, 5 days later, they're going to have a CL present that you can kill with the PGF, and they're gonna come in heat within the 3 days, and your bulls are gonna catch them. So this is to this PGF shot 4 days later is to be able to catch those cows that came in heat right before. So here on this right side, we have a protocol for MGA use. So MGA, like I said before, is a feed through a supplement that acts like progesterone and is only approved for heifers. So the indication is to use them for 14 days in the feed at 0.5 milligrams per head per day. So at this moment, this PGF, this progesterone, analog is gonna hold on the ovulation. So during this 14 days, those heifers are not gonna ovulate. And then when you remove it from the feeding, they're gonna start coming in heat. However, in this case, we do not recommend to breed right after you stop using the MGA. And why is that? Because these heifers, they were prevented from ovulating for so long that potentially this egg that was being that was there still in the ovary for this long of time, it's going to be of low quality and the fertility is going to drop dramatically. So we don't want to breed this first heat. So what we want to do is breed on the next one. So you wait for 10 days and then you turn the bulls out. And those bulls are going to get all of those cows, all of those heifers that return in heat 21 days after their first heat, okay? When we use cedar protocol, like this one in the bottom, is only for 7 days. So we use 7 days of cedar and turn the bulls out right away. And why is that? A 7-day follicle is not old to be a bad quality egg and to decrease the fertility. So that because of that, a cedar can be, you can put the bulls right away. So after you remove the cedar, when the cows come in heat, cows or heifers, they're gonna get them, they're gonna breed them. So just to emphasize, why is that important? So when you think about that long term of preventing ovulation on the MGA, for example, you're going to generate a persistent follicle, which means that this follicle on the dark line here is a large follicle on an ovulatory size that remains in the ovary for a long time. So here you see, it remains in the ovary for more than 10 days, while the new follicles that emerge in the middle of the protocol, they have much better pregnancy rate. Here on the right, you can see the pregnancy rates of a persistent follicle in black versus a new follicle is much higher. This study was in dairy cows, but you can see the same behavior for beef cows. The older the follicle, the worse is the pregnancy rate. So if you think about the days, the quality of the embryos, follicles that are older than 8 days, they produce much more poor and degenerated embryos than the ones that are present for less time. So we want to prevent that. We want to have the most quality of embryos possible to be capable of establishing a pregnancy more efficiently. So here on the second key point, I'm going to talk about the synchronization goals. I'm using the 7-day co-sync as an example, but this serves for any other protocol. So basically, when we start a 7-day co-sync protocol for timed AI, we insert an implant, a progesterone implant, and we give a generate shot. So like I said before, the generate shot will cause ovulation and the emergence of a new follicular array. So we expect to give the generate and cause ovulation, right? So let's say that works. In a couple of days, you're going to have an emergence of a new wave, a brand new group of follicles, high quality, growing in the ovary. And also the CL from this ovulation is going to start developing. So as the days pass, the CL remains in the ovary, and the follicle keeps growing. So by day 7 of the protocol, we have a large CL that was produced from the ovulation on day 0, and we have a large brand new follicle ready to be to cause heat. So what we do, we give a PGF shot to kill that CL and allow ovulation again. And we increase the LH pulsatility, so we decrease the progesterone concentration to increase the LH, and allowing this follicle, this growing follicle, to get even larger and cause the heat behavior. So we expect to see them in heat within 60 hours until the day of insemination. So on day 9 of this protocol, we have a large follicle that potentially caused a heat behavior within the previous 24 hours. And we induce that follicle to ovulate with another shot of GnRH. And we inseminate right away as well. So this is a fixed time AI. This is the ideal scenario for that protocol. That's what we wanted to. However, like we mentioned before, we may have cows in either one of these stages. So we have 21 days of estrous cycle. We don't know which stage they are when we start a protocol. They might not have a dominant follicle to ovulate, and so on and so forth. So because of that, we have those sorts of variations. And this is an important thing to point it out because this is why we don't have 100% efficiency, right? Because we cannot predict at which time these cows are going to respond or not. But we do our best to get them going, right? So one of the good indicators that our protocol is working well is the estrous expression. So estrous expression is really important, and in a study performed here in SDSU with about 10,000 cows overall years across many years, they detected that in a fixed time AI situation, there is an increase in 27% of the conception rate in cows that showed heat compared with those that did not show heat. What does that mean? It means that heat is really important to establish the pregnancy later. So that endocrine environment that allows them to come in heat would be beneficial for the pregnancy later. And in a recent study that we did in our lab, we have shown that this is a different protocol. It's not the 7-day co-sync, it's the 7 and 7. It's a very popular protocol as well. And it has an average good fertility. And even though with that protocol, we still have a large variation in the time that the cows come in heat. You can see here by this dark bar that about 39% of our cows, they came in heat before 48 hours after the seed and seeder removal, which even though is the heat expression, it's not on the correct time because we would inseminate them only at 66 hours, okay? So, and why am I saying that? Because the time of insemination matters a lot. So the overall rule of thumb is to inseminate cows after 12 hours of the onset of estrus. We call it the AM/PM rule. And why we say that? This rule is not set in stone. It can be arranged between 6 and 18 hours, and is the best time to inseminate because when we inseminate within those times, we give the sperm the time that it needs to get capacitated, which means to be capable of fertilizing that egg. And in addition to that, you inseminate before ovulation to occur, okay? So on average, sperm, frozen thawed sperm lasts about 24 hours in the tract. So if you inseminate within 12 hours after the onset of estrus, you give that enough time for capacitation, but you do not go over this sperm viability. So you give that sperm enough time to get ready and reach the oocyte before ovulation. And why is that so important? Because the oocyte only lasts 6 to 10 hours, okay? Let's say if we inseminate super early, we inseminate right, we saw them in the cow in heat and inseminate right away at the onset of estrus. You're gonna give enough time for this sperm to capacitate, but you run into the risk of having the viability going down. So the sperm might start dying by the time that the ovulation occurs. So then you lose a little bit on the efficiency. And if you inseminate too late, you're not going to give the sperm enough time to get ready for fertilizing. You're going to be okay on the sperm viability, but you run into the issue of this oocyte viability to go later, to go down really fast. So until by the time that the sperm gets ready, the oocyte is already dead. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep on the both of our chances really high. We want to keep our sperm capable of fertility and our oocyte viable still. So when you respect the insemination time on the same study that I showed before in our lab, that we did in our lab last year, we showed that when we fixed IMAI without looking, when the animals were inseminated at 66 hours and they did not came in heat or they came in heat too late, they had a drop in fertility when compared to those animals that follow the AM/PM rule, which means that we inseminate them within 12 to 18 hours after onset of estrus. We had, as you can see here, we had much higher fertility. So, and that's really important, especially when you talk about sex semen. So in B3 Task Force, they also have some options for sex semen protocols. And one of the things with the sex semen protocol is that they usually are performed later. The insemination is performed later after, when compared to conventional semen. And why is that? Because the semen on the sex semen technology harms the semen a lot, and this semen does not last as long as a conventional semen. So because of that, you have to inseminate even closer to the ovulation time. And usually those protocols utilize estrus detection aids to help you to detect exactly when this estrus started, to help you with that. Another issue that you can run into when you're talking about synchronization is the return to cyclicity that Robin also mentioned in the first slides. I'm using here a Bos indicus cow as a great example because they are very intense on the suppression after partum. So after and the postpartum, those cows, the stimulus that the calf give, like visual, auditory, olfactory contact, they cause a real decrease in the estradiol release due to the opioids like oxytocin, the hormones that a cow releases by seeing the calf, by interacting with the calf. Those hormones, they cause a decrease in estradiol, as a consequence, a decrease in GnRH and LH, and a depletion of follicular growth and ovulation, which means that they take a lot longer to come in heat by themselves without induction. One of the initial synchronization strategies that have been used in the past was the calf removal. So for a long time, people used to remove the calf, leave it for 2 or 3 days, and then those cows would come in heat, showing that this effect is caused by the presence of the calf. And that can happen to different amounts depending on the breed that you're working with. But it's still, the calf presence still have some sort of inhibition on the capacity of this cow to show heat. In addition to that, right after calving, the first heat is usually silent. Those cows are being in an estrus, which means they're not showing heat for so long during the pregnancy that the brain kind of loses the ability of responding to estradiol. So the first ovulation that occurs postpartum, they do ovulate, but they don't show heat because the brain kind of forgot how that works. So then after a while, after this first ovulation, the progesterone that the CL ovulated but not showing heat, it's putting on, causes this brain to start responding again to estradiol. So then the next estrus is going to be visible, and then you have ovulation. If you let it happen naturally, look how far you go in postpartum. You go to 55 days postpartum, which kind of takes you out of that window that Robbie mentioned in the beginning, to have 1 calf per year. So the silent ovulation, like I said, is because of this long time without expression. So the brain doesn't remember how to respond to estradiol. So when you have a CL, it goes to the brain and sensibilize this brain again, causing the next behavior estrus. So how you fix that? You basically, if you use a synchronization strategy right before this when you expect to have this first ovulation, you can correct that. You can mimic what happens on the second ovulation. You can prime that brain to the estradiol again and let the estrus to occur. So that's another key point to make the synchronization to work for you in that sense. So as a take-home message, what we have that females can be in estrus at predicted time when you use estrus synchronization, and that can help you if you decide to use artificial insemination or even natural breeding because you optimize the use of your bull. Calves can be heavier and more uniform at weaning when you use that. Females that respond to the synchronization protocol are conceiving earlier. We have on average, about 50 to 60% of your cows already pregnant on the first 21 days of your breeding season when you use estrus synchronization. You can induce cyclicity in an estrus cows and also in prepubertal heifers because that sensibilization also works for prepubertal heifers. You can use with nitrile service, like I said before, because you can optimize the use of your bulls. You can leave the bulls with the cows for a more targeted time, and that way also anticipating the calving season next year, anticipating and making your weaning more uniform as well. And you also can maximize the labor and input costs when you implement AI. So if you use AI, you can concentrate the work towards checking heat if that's what you want, or even breeding if you use fixed time AI to a certain specific time. Okay, so and my last slide here, we have some of the resources that are available to be used for synchronization. So we have this synchronization planner over here where you can punch in what you're going to do, what kind of protocols you want to use, what kind of animals do you have, how many animals do you have, and it helps you to set up a calendar and to plan ahead your breeding season. The Beef Reaper Task Force that I mentioned, it has a link for this planner as well, and it has these protocols that are updated as research advances, and these other strategies that can also help you to calculate your breeding season in your synchronization strategies. Okay, and with that, I finish and I open up for questions. Thank you.
Jessica, I I just wanted to, you and I both mentioned the advantage of having, using estrus synchronization to help induce cyclicity in non-estrus females, both prepubertal and ones postpartum, but not all hormones actually do that. Can you identify the hormones that actually potentially help jumpstart, knowing that it's not a silver bullet, but which hormones would actually help jumpstart if they're not too deep in estrus?
So usually I'm gonna go back. Can you still see my slides?
Yes.
So when you're using simulating cyclicity in postpartum and in estrus cows, usually and also in prepubertal heifers, the use of progesterone helps a lot to prime that brain for the estradiol, to prime the brain for the estrus behavior, and also to induce, for example, in the prepubertal heifers, you can induce them to remain with the follicle for a long time, a follicle that is long, that's big enough to cause that estradiol increase. So if you look at my slide, if you look at the estrus cycle slide before, we have here a follicle that is growing. The small follicles, they're not capable of causing a heat behavior, but the large follicles, they do. So when you put a progesterone in one of those heifers that don't have big follicles yet, you can induce them to produce a larger follicle capable of causing the estrus behavior. And in the cows, the same thing with the progesterone. It primes the brain. They do have follicles, but they don't have the brain prepared to cause the heat like we expect.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, that's exactly how what I
Mhm.
want you to express, because some people also share like, well, I have some prostaglandin. I'll just give them a prostaglandin, and that doesn't help jumpstart. It has to be something like it has to be the progesterone. So thank you. But also, I
Mhm.
think we also need to make sure that our listeners are aware, or people that are watching, that it's not a silver bullet. So if there's a nutritional stress, a disease, or health, health stress of some kind, these synchronization hormones will not be the silver bullet to bring everything into heat for you, or bring them to start cycling, excuse me.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, when I started talking about the key points, yeah, that's one thing that I think you worth to emphasize again. It's we are assuming that all other factors that can impact reproduction, such as the health of the herd, nutrition management, that is extremely important, and even environment, the requirements are all met. So assuming that, thinking specifically of the synchronization protocols, that those are the key points.
Jess, maybe along the lines of that, and Robin, you can take this too. I know we talk a lot about, the nutritional side and making sure cows are in adequate body condition score, coming in calving, coming into breeding. Can you expand a bit about how important that is for cows to return to cyclicity, as well as, maybe the impact it has on your estrous synchronization protocols as well?
absolutely. So body condition score, if you're not familiar with it, is a measurement of energy status of those females, and it's a score from 1 to 9. And we like to see our cows, our mature cows, at a body condition score 5 at calving, because that dictates the length of their postpartum interval. And like we said, remember, we have to have them bred within 82-ish days after calving to keep that 365-day calving interval. And the poorer the condition the female is in, the longer she is in an estrus or not cycling. So having those body condition score of mature cows at a 5, that ensures that they will start cycling earlier after calving, and making sure we get those females bred. And when we're looking at our replacement heifers, or our heifers, I should say, we know they're still growing, because typically we want them at about 65% of mature body weight at breeding. And then at calving time, we want them at 85% of mature body weight. And with that being said, we want those heifers to be at a body condition score at least a 6, because we know they are still growing themselves, and now they also have that lactational demand on them, and we want them to get bred. And so, again, to have that at a body condition score 6, again, at calving. And for most of you that feed, that run cows, know it's very, very hard to even start putting a body condition score on after calving, because of their lactational demand on those females. So that's really important to focus on that body condition score, prior to calving, to make sure they're at that either a 5 for a cow or a 6 for a heifer. And that does impact, because uh, if they're nutritionally stressed, again, they're not coming into heat. And again, estrous synchronization hormones are a tool, not a silver bullet, right? So again, if we're averaging a body condition score 4 or less, those synchronization hormones will not benefit us as you would like. On the flip side, though, if we have cows or heifers too excessively fleshy, that can also impact reproduction. So there's that happy medium, or that sweet spot, as we say, 5, 6 area. So.
Yeah, we talk about a lot, like in dairy cattle, they talk about that a lot. And here we see the same thing is the plane of nutrition. If an animal is after in that sweet spot when you're breeding them again, if they have higher body condition score at calving, the chances that they're gonna lose a lot of weight during the first months of lactation is is high. So if you have a cow that is in a good condition score, not excessive, the chances that she's going to maintain or even gain some weight during that time are higher. So if they are gaining or maintaining during the period, you should not see uh, any harm you should not see harm in the reproductive efficiency. But on the other side, if they lose a lot of weight during that time, you might see impacts affecting your efficiency as well.
So if you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A or in the chat box. I love putting speakers on the hot spot, so I know Jessica and Robin would just love that. So maybe while individuals are taking the opportunity to type in their questions, I do have a quick question. So if I'm a beginner farmer or have just a few cows, so like let's say I have 20, 30 cows. So I'm only going to need one bull about. So tell me, why would I want to synchronize my cows? Because I'm going to have to buy a bull either way, right? So that's a question I always get is, so what you going to convince me to purchase my do that? Because the other thing is I may have to have someone come and breed for me, because if I have that few cows, I might not. So how would you go about helping me set up? Because I think there's tremendous impact of using Estrous, because then I can select each bull I want for each cow and all of these cool things I can do within my world. So help me think through my process of what I would do to make that happen. And it
So
can be a bigger herd too, whatever you would like. Pick your number and go with it.
that's a great question, Julie. It's a good point. So what we have is that if you're starting from scratch, you have no synchronization whatsoever in your herd. You have that situation that Robin mentioned, and we have cows coming in heat every day. Or independent of if you have a shorter herd, a smaller herd, you might not have every day, but you're gonna have them spread it out throughout a whole month. So you're gonna have to be grabbing your stuff to go AI them every day if you're doing AI, right? If you have a bull, your bull probably gonna catch them, but you're gonna have calving season for a whole month for only 20 cows. So you're gonna have to be dealing with calves for a longer time. So Ester synchronization is a great to make those managements concentrated in a specific time. So if you have them synchronized and you're even using bulls, not even AI, and your bulls cover them within 3 days, you're probably gonna have about, I don't know, a week or two of calving season next year. So you concentrate your work on calving season, and also you concentrate the work on your bull. Depending on I've heard some people that get the bulls for the season and sell them right away after you finish. So you keep those bulls for a shorter time and you can send them away. They don't keep wasting your money on the feeding costs, on keeping the bulls and stuff like that. And if you have larger herds, that those effects even maximize. If you have 300 cows, let's say, you don't want to be calving them for a long time, right? If you can concentrate that within a couple of months, it will be better for you. And you can optimize your labor, right? In addition to that, what Julie mentioned, when you use artificial insemination specifically, instead of having one bull to cover your 20 cows, you can have 20 different bulls for your 20 different cows, or how many you decide, because in a tank, in a nitrogen tank, you can hold as many bulls as you want. So you have options for genetic improvement. You can put your herd in the path that you want for genetics in an easier way than having just a single bull, for example. Or if that's what you want, you can have a round of synchronization and still have the bulls to cover and optimize that use on those bulls.
I think you also have an opportunity, if you are an operator that has to have an off-farm, off-ranch job, you can condense that calving season. And even with AI, for instance, you can condense it to a weekend breeding, and then you also have a shorter calving interval also. And I think that's a big benefit for people that are not home, throughout the day. They can, kind of take their vacation during the time that they expect a majority of their um, cows or heifers to calve. Now, with natural service too, I mean, there's a even on those smaller herds, it's pretty awesome because typically bull power, some people are really concerned when they're using natural service and estrous synchronization that they have to have more bulls, but in reality, the typical bull to cow ratio is very what is almost identical to what you would see if you were not using synchronization. And so, like if you're doing a one-shot prostaglandin, you might see 50% of those cows bred up in the first 10 days. And that's pretty awesome to me. So there's some big benefits there.
And I think the other thing that really key point is having those calves grouped closer together and having larger calves for that smaller guy to sell versus calves that are spread out. So when they go to the sale barn, they're sorting them into such small groups. So I think you guys are right on. Are there other questions from the audience? If not, I have another one for you guys. So what can I expect on a fixed timed AI versus if I heat detect? And is it justified to heat detect? Because I got to pay myself something. There's an opportunity cost for me to go heat detect. I did it as a child. I used to carry my lawn chair out to heat detect for my dad so we could breed our cows for 4-H calves. But what's the difference? What should I expect those differences to potentially maybe be?
So in large studies that I've seen, like the differences are about like I mentioned before, like on the slides, 27% more cows get pregnant on if they are in heat when compared to fixed time AI without heat. So having cows in heat is always much better because you have a better environment, right? So that the fact that if worth it or not, it will depend on the situation. So there are some studies that show the economic value when the labor costs, depending on where you are in the state or in the country, if the labor cost is not that detrimental, if you have labor available to go check that heat and catch those cows in heat, it's very beneficial because you get the more of them. So I would say like we expect at least a 10% increase on 10 to 15% increase in pregnancy rate. However, one problem that we run through a lot, and we did last summer, we did our study with heat detection. We had students checking heat every 6 hours, which is undoable for a farm setting if you think through. Who wants to go every 6 hours to go check heat? And you can use estrous detection aids to help you on that, but you have to check at least 2 to 3 times a day because those cows are going to come in heat throughout the day. And one day, and from the morning to the afternoon, that time of insemination can change. So it depends a lot on what you have for labor. So you can use estrous detection aids to help you with that, but you gotta have a reliable labor to be checking that and inseminating on time. So for some operations, if you have that availability, if we have a Julie to go check heat like your dad had, you can go and have a great efficiency on that. But that again comes to operation from operation. Another point that we mentioned before is, for example, some people need the assistance of a veterinarian to go check the pregnancy slate. And if you have a more concentrated pregnancy, if you have more concentrated breeding season, you can call this veterinarian to go like once or twice in a more specific day. And it's not going to require a lot of time to try to estimate gestational age and stuff like that to try to give you the guidelines on who is pregnant from AI, who is pregnant from bull, or vice versa. So then you can optimize the hiring process as well. You can hire people for specific days if you want to. So that's those are my thoughts.
Okay. Aaron, do you have a question?
Yeah. So say if I have never used estrous synchronization before and say it doesn't matter if I have natural service or if I artificially inseminate, is there a challenge to get cows to sync up that haven't been on a protocol before, especially like more mature cows, or?
What kind of challenge are you
Well, just
talking?
like do you see, is there do they respond pretty well to estrous synchronization the first time, no matter what their age is?
Well,
So that's
so Jessica, I think what she's asking is typically what I'll see with producers is the first year they use estrous synchronization, they have a lower response than maybe the next year. Is that what? So that, I don't know if you want to call it a lag or
mm-hmm.
figuring out that maybe it's the people figuring it out. I'm not sure if it's the cows or the humans, but
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure if it's a cow issue or if it's a technical issue because we have all humans. You have a learning curve, right? We have a learning curve on how to apply the technology correctly, how to keep the hormones, how to use the hormones and stuff like that. And there is also a problem if you have cows calving all over the place. Let's say you have cows calving year round, right? So you're gonna have cows that you're gonna synchronize on your first round that they are not on that stage of uterine involution, for example, that Robin mentioned in the beginning. So if you start synchronizing them before the uterine involution, they're gonna have lower efficiency. And some of your cows might be on that stage. Some of your cows might not be on the right nutritional status, depending on when they are after calving or stuff like that. So that might take a little bit of a leg work to get there. Genetics also play a role. So like more and more the sire companies are investing in fertility in bulls that are high fertility. So if you get like more your genetics get better as you progress, you see better pregnancy rates as you go as well. So it takes a little bit of time from the first to the second year potentially, but this is a lot of like learning curve, right? So I believe that is more a learning curve than the cows itself.
so I'm going to call it, even though I think we could stay here all day and visit about synchronizing cows, because it's kind of one of my favorite things to do, even though I'm a nutritionist by training. So, but I want to thank Jess and Robin for their presentations today. If you have questions, please reach out to them or any of the extension staff at SDSU. Thank you for your time today, and we hope to see you on May 15th at our next Cattle HQ Live. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.